Okay. Well, welcome to A Time for Community. Today we're going to have a group of panelists, and we're going to do some afternoon work breaking into triads to try and surface some of the transformations that we hope take place today. And we're going to begin today's work with a blessing by Gerald Duncan, who is a Ute elder, Northern Ute elder. Gerald, would you like to speak? Clifford, I'm sorry.
First of all, I would like to say hello to everybody. It's usually customary among the Indian people when they are asked to do an invocation or say a prayer for a group of people to express themselves. As you all know, my people lived here many, many years ago. I am part of a group called David Watch, and that's a name of a group of people that lived in certain parts of the country, yet they're part of the Ute Nation. We're in the central of that area, what we call David Watch Nation. To the south, that's into South Park, and up into the canyon here, and to the north of them were the Yapatka. Yapatka is my mother's people. We were placed in the state of Utah, and somewhat were taken away from these beautiful mountains. And then I have returned. I was telling Will that I have been looking for any documentation or any writings concerning what we left behind. I have not noticed anything that deals with spirituality yet. So that would mean that we did not give that up. These mountains that we see are the area where we are congregated today still contains that, and I have the right to come here and speak on behalf of our spirits. In fact, I have the right to come here and do a ceremony because that was not taken away from us. As you all know, our body, our existence here on this earth comes from two sources, and that's our physical existence and also our spiritual. Those two have to be together in everything that we do. And everything that we do, we have to have a beginning as to how we are going to be that day, or how we set ourselves when we are ready to pursue a certain goal to be reached. It has to how we're going to do that. So I just want to share that with you. And that's why it's good to say hello to everyone, because we're all same here this day. My difficulties in the very beginning of my life was this, that I could not translate English into Ute and Ute into English because they didn't mean the same. Even though if you broke the word up into many pieces and it was supposed to mean the same thing, it does not mean that. Because the other one is tied into a spiritual existence on this world and how we look at the world. So when I talk about prayer, it may mean a lot to me. And also to you, it may have a different meaning. So I just want to express myself that way this day. So in your mind, in your thoughts as to how we're going to be, you can follow me along, even if you don't understand the language that I'm supposed to be using in my prayer. Through your loved ones and through the journeys that you're going to be making in your life. You can set your prayers that way. Thank you. Mipakatak Munitachon, Auche Number Veronica. Jewan, Tawach to Punitat Maratur, no Marisrai. Chekai, you Chamar Ratur, Upak Punitan Maratur, Mara on Nipakaku Mike Nega, Mikan. Ichi, Mamant John Mar Ratur Road. Did so be Ratur Road soon. Udaro, Mike Nega, Au John Mikan. He put to which at the Rat roads, he put Jawan Awak Mupunit Mar Ratur, Mike Nega, Mike Nusura. And now at A, which is Mupunit John Ratur, Mamusaka Pachus. None of that to buy Kaishan event to our Rat John Mar, Mike Nura, Mike. Pam no A, which evade my cake no Ratur, Mike Nura. Ah, which I want to bet John Punit John Wat Mike Nega. Makanasura, Nega. I went race. Makanasura, Nega. The way, Mar, Makanasura, Urasam. Hey. My went race was what to Makan. Thank you.
Thank you, Clifford, for coming such a long distance to bring us into alignment with this land, this beautiful land we call the Roaring Fork Valley. I'm now going to read a prayer by George Washington, because this is George Washington's birthday. And I think he'll set the tone for what we all aspire to with this gathering. I now make it my earnest prayer that God would incline the hearts of the citizens to entertain a brotherly affection and love for one another, for their fellow citizens of the United States at large, and finally, that he would most graciously be pleased to dispose us all to do justice, to love mercy, and to demean ourselves with that charity, humility, and pacific temper of mind which are the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion, and without a humble imitation of whose example in these things, we can never hope to be a happy nation. That was from a circular letter to the state governors expressing his hopes for the future of the United States upon disbanding the Revolutionary Army in 1783. So today, we get to think about these high aspirations for our country, and we get to question whether we're at the pinnacle of this democratic experiment now in a country where incarceration is one of our biggest businesses. And we're incarcerating our youth, we're incarcerating our people, and this forum is to look at the circumstances, the belief systems, the conditions that have given rise to a culture where people must walk beyond the confines of our expectations in order to honor their freedom as individuals, perhaps. Thank you very much. And I'm wanting to introduce Scott Halazon now, who's going to be the moderator of this panel and the facilitator of this afternoon's events. Scott was born in Gunnison, Colorado, and he traveled and studied in both traditional and non-traditional settings in Colorado, Massachusetts, Israel, China, Japan, and Russia. Scott trained with Virginia Satir and Stephen Young in the Human Potential Validation Model. He created forums such as this one throughout the United States, China, and the former Soviet Union, most recently for the Corporations to End World Hunger Foundation based in Washington, D.C. Today he resides on Colorado's Front Range and in the Denver-Boulder area and in the Roaring Fork Valley. So we're very lucky to have Scott here, and we thank him for bringing the skills that he has acquired through his life to this occasion. And I also want to thank you all for coming, and I want to thank all the panelists for bringing their wisdom to this process. So I'm looking forward to a wonderful afternoon and evening of some good discussion and heart-storming for the future of our valley and our nation.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Clifford. Welcome. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm hopeful that we'll get a lot of very powerful work done today. Our intention is to have this be an open forum for the community, that we might surface the deeper truth that we all know and maybe haven't found a voice or a way to express. And our goal to do that, throughout the day, we have panelists that will present. We have some questions for the panelists, and then we'll go to an open discussion with the people that are here. And understand that we're doing this in the midweek and during lunch hours, so that people may be coming and going. And we have comings and goings in all our lives, just as we do in our families and in our businesses. So if somebody needs to leave for whatever reason, or somebody needs to come, just know that there may be people coming and going. We have some technical things to look at. We have a microphone that's handheld that some of the panelists may use. We have a lapel mic, and we have this mic. So there will be those kinds of technical things that we need to attend to. Before I introduce our first speaker, I'd like to ask everybody if you're comfortable and the temperature in the room's right and your seats are okay. And is anybody want to move your chair, or everybody's okay? Technically, can we raise the volume? No, we can't. So that's good. Thank you very much. So I'll try and speak up. And if the panelists would do the same, try and speak up for the benefit of everybody's here. Is everybody in the panel comfortable in their chairs? Okay, so I think we're ready to begin. Our first speaker today is Dr. Will Evans. Will is born in Colorado, resides in the North Fork Valley. He is a graduate of Baylor Medical School and holds 2 degrees in acupuncture from College of Traditional Medicine of the United Kingdom. Dr. Evans has developed emergency medical systems and departments, as well as spine rehabilitation programs. His published research on lumbar invertebrate discs has led to new understandings of the prevention of disc degeneration. His purpose is to bring coherence to healing in this time and guide patients and organizations in how to evoke and maintain a healthy balance. Will's going to help us get in touch with our hearts by showing us or telling us about how the heart works in this world, both in the medical world and in our greater poetic sense. Dr. Evans.
Thank you, Scott. And Clifford, thank you for coming from Utah and being here to bless this. And Connie, thank you for the energy to put this together. I think what I'd like to do to start is just invite you for a moment to move your awareness down into your heart center and connect with a place in nature you may know, and feel the earth as it travels through your body. That was the way I was originally taught to create what I will refer to as we go on, a coherent or a balanced heart. And it's my privilege to be here today, and it's an honor for me to be asked to speak to you about vigilance and nurturance and the balanced heart. And that's going to be a mouthful. To do that, I'm going to use some images, and we might as well start with one that's familiar to all of you. It's in your billfold. So if you've got a $1 bill, it might be useful for you to take it out and turn it over and look on the reverse side, and you will see an eagle with its head turned toward an olive branch. And In the other direction, in the other set of talons, is a cluster of arrows. Those are images of nurturance and vigilance. Other words that I use to describe that is there's a life-protecting function. We have a whole nervous system devoted to protecting our lives. And we have a contrasting nervous system devoted to sustaining and enhancing and maintaining and restoring life. So I think you can probably just keep it in one place on your lap. The arrows are obviously the life-protecting vigilance. And we live in a time where there's a need for great vigilance. If we were to walk across the street and we suddenly saw that big Suburban was coming faster than we thought, our heart would automatically speed up. We would run out of the street, and that's your life-saving vigilance coming into action. It's a friend. It's essential. When we get to the other side of the street, we should normally go back into a state where the life-sustaining nervous system, the nurturing one, takes control. And we settle back down. Because we live in a time of transition, great change, it's possible to run on the life-protecting nervous system the whole time, on vigilance. It's very useful in a competitive culture. So you probably have seen in yourself the potential to be very aggressive, to be very vigilant. You've seen it in other people. You know what it's like to be around people like that. And then there is a whole new level of that kind of vigilance. And that is the ability to be highly vigilant, but in a state of balance in your heart and your whole system, your whole being, that is a notch up. You know people like that in this community. And I have great respect for Roderick. He carries that energy in his job in the police department. There are many paths to that kind of balance. The nurturance in a time of change, in a time of transition, can become neglected. People can become confused about, do I have time to do that? Do I have time to take a walk in the woods and just slow down and get out of the speed of all this change? And so nurturance can tend to get dropped. But in fact, one of the things that we're learning scientifically is that there are heavy prices that are paid when we do that. And you don't have to look very far to see there are heavy prices in relationships, in families, in communities, in whole cultures, when that life-sustaining dimension is neglected, overlooked, given away, taken away, or sold. The way I say that, and the reason I can say that, is that in my work, I have made a transition in my career, and I'm now involved with working with the heart most of the time. And I am not a cardiologist. I am not an expert on heart disease. I'm delighted Dr. Gerson is here at the hospital. I am working with teaching people how to create the healthy balance that's available to all of us. It takes only a willing heart and a little effort. The reason that I can say this with the certainty and the clarity I do at this point is that we're beginning to look at the heart from a new place. And if you will pick up the handout that looks like this, that's on your seat, and go to the first image, you will see something called heart rate variability. And what that is the space between your heartbeats. Contrary to what we have all believed, myself very much included, I always took my pulse for 15 seconds, multiplied by 4, and said, I'm running 50 beats a minute, or 70 beats a minute, or 90 beats a minute. It's not that way. In a healthy, normal person, that interval is constantly changing. And the way I've come to understand it is it's a measure of my resilience. It's a measure of my ability to run out of the street when a truck is coming and come back down to a resting level when I get to the other side. It's an ability to use the resilience in the stepping from vigilance to nurturance successfully. And that's a sign of a healthy, successful system, is resilience. What drives that continual change is that the life-protecting system speeds up the heart rate and the life-sustaining system slows it down. Those two parts of what we call our autonomic nervous system are in a continual dance, and it's going on all the time. Young people have a higher resilience, a higher heart rate variability. As we get older, we lose it. And if we stay active physically, do other things that can support it, we can keep our resilience for longer. I'll say just a little bit briefly about the significance of that resilience, and that is loss of that resilience predicts risk of death. If I don't have the capacity to run out of the street, I'm a flat pancake. If I don't have the resilience to respond to a physical illness or a physical demand, adjust to a change in temperature, which is all what the systems interact to do, I'm at risk. But much more significant and relative to this afternoon is what happens with the next diagram. If you look down below, the one you looked at before, you will see two contrasting records of heartbeats. The beat-to-beat variability creates a pattern. And the patterns are in stark contrast. You'll see the top one is associated with a particular emotion, and it's labeled the pattern of frustration. If you think about what it feels like to be frustrated, that's what it looks like. And what's going on is a competitive relationship between your nurturance and your vigilance. The vigilance says speed up. The nurturance says slow down. And they're both active. They're both working. So it's like driving your car, pushing on the gas and the brake at the same time. It's a very wasteful, inefficient way to live. And yet in a time of change, it's a very easy way to live because you can get caught in it. And unless you have developed the skills and practiced them, or you have the heritage of Clifford and a tradition of walking in balance, you're at risk. And the price of living that way is widespread disease. Disease of many forms. One form is high blood pressure. 1 in 4 working Americans has high blood pressure. When they get to the other side of the street, their blood pressure doesn't come down to normal because they're vigilant all the time. Have to be, to keep up with change, the accelerating technology, what's happening in the culture. The pattern below is a smooth sine wave. And that's achieved when there is a cooperation between nurturance and vigilance. Both are active. Both have pretty close to the same amount of variability. What's different is that there is a cooperative relationship between those two divisions of our autonomic nervous system, the life-protecting and the life-sustaining, and the life-sustaining is dominant. When that happens, I am able to be highly vigilant, but rather than being ready to fight or flee, I am in a place of love and playfulness, forgiveness, appreciation. So if you think about what it's like to be on the snow, on your skis, on a board, and you've had a great day in the zone, there's no extra effort, just the right amount of turn, your brain's quiet, and you're probably pretty close to this rhythm. You may have that with a group of friends at dinner, walking in the woods, listening to music, and you can learn to create it readily and fairly quickly. I taught a high school girl how to do it last week in 3 hours, and she did it on a television program for grassroots. So there's skills that are not inaccessible, and they're open to everyone with a willing heart. It's the natural frequency of the earth. And it can be achieved by a number of ways. It can be driven emotionally. So just the emotion of appreciation. And I have a copy of another handout that I wrote. If you would like, I'd be happy to give you a copy. The power of appreciation. I wrote it at Thanksgiving. Some people have a tradition of celebrating Thanksgiving every day, and that will drive their heart into that balanced, coherent rhythm. Breathing is another doorway. The rhythm of the earth is another. There are many, many doorways. I've tested hundreds of people now, and I watch them do it over and over. I think I'm complete for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. So the title of our forum is A Time for Community, and exploring the heart of the matter, our boys, our children, our future. And I think Dr. Evans brings to this forum today the heart of the matter. We're in touch with our hearts and the nurturance and vigilance of how we function in the society and what happens when the vigilant heart becomes dominant and the nurturing heart is suppressed. So as we go through the next period of time, and we have about 2 hours to do this, and will be aired on Grassroots, and Dr. Evans' work is aired on Grassroots over the next week or so, and this will be aired. We're going to now go deeper into what happened in our community that causes us to want to come together as a community and speak to the youth and the young boys in our community. And we'll start with Dave Throgmorton. Dave's going to talk on our youth today. Dave Throgmorton, PhD, based in Wyoming, graduated of the University of Wyoming with an MA and PhD degrees in sociology from the University of Illinois. Tenured sociological professor at Century University in Louisiana, where he taught for 9 years. Academic and dean, vice president for academic affairs at William Penn College in Iowa from 1998 to 1995, and Barrett College in Illinois from 1995 to 1999. Organized Pax Christi group, a peace advocacy group in Shreveport at the height of the Reagan warmongering years, and adult literacy organization in Shreveport at the same time. Both are still in existence, and Dave is a member of the Iowa Yearly Meeting of Friends, married 26 years to Christine, and they have one son, Kellum, who is a senior at CRMS. Currently, Dave is the executive director of Compass in Woody Creek and Carbondale. He moved here about 1.5 years ago with a preschool and 2 to K through 8 charter schools in Compass. He spends a lot of his time with his students from ages 5 to 14. At Compass, he hired one of the young men involved in a Aspen series of teen-age court cases and got to know him quite well. Dave has the heart of a member of this community who connects with the land and the people of the Roaring Fork Valley. Dave?
Thanks. Well, I'm tickled to be here. and I'm a college professor, and I've got a captive audience in 50 minutes, so this is the way we're going to do it. I can't stand by the mic. My mother used to say I had the St. Vitus dance. I'm sure that there's a technical word for it, but what it means is I can't stand still. I come to you with no particular expertise about youth, other than the fact that I have chosen in my career to hang around with people who are younger than I am. I spent 20 years in colleges and universities working with college students, some of whom are now older than I was when I started being a college professor. And now I find myself working with people somewhere between the ages of 3 and 14. If you ever come to my office, you see I'm right in the middle of this great big building, and about 8:30 in the morning I get 34 kids between the age of 18 months and 4 years who come tumbling in, and about 3:30 in the afternoon they tumble right back out again. So I spend a lot of time with younger people, and I've learned a couple things I'm going to tell you about. I had a great opportunity a number of years ago to spend an afternoon with Margaret Mead, and she was quite elderly at the time, and she was really cranky, and she was really hard to get along with, and it was a really long afternoon. But she said one thing during the course of that afternoon that stuck with me, and it made a great deal of sense. And at that point, she was very much into being a grandparent. And she was really having fun being a grandparent, and she was talking about how great it was to be a grandparent. But then she turned to us, and she looked and she says, you know, you can't be a successful grandparent unless you're in significant touch with people at every single other stage of the life cycle. So if you're going to be a successful grandparent, you've got to be around your grandbabies, and you've got to be around their parents, and you've got to be around everybody else. And I have found that to be true. I cannot envision myself in a world where I'm hanging around with a lot of people my own age all the time. I can't even see that world, and it makes no sense to me. I think it's very important for me to be hanging around with people who are a lot older than I am, but mostly people who are a lot younger than I am. And maybe it speaks to where I am in my particular life cycle, that I have reached that point where I no longer got the juice from college students. 20 years of juice, that's pretty good. You know, I got a lot of mileage out of being with college students. But now I find myself needing to be around these 3-year-olds and these 9-year-olds and these 14-year-olds to get the same kind of sense of what it is. So I bring no expertise to it other than the fact that I've spent 20 some odd years hanging around with people that are younger than I am. And I've learned a couple of things. And one of the most important things I think that I have learned about this is that we don't tend to listen to people who are younger than we are. And that's kind of the one thing that I want to talk about today. We don't listen to people who are younger than we are. I can remember when I first became a college professor, the deal was I had stuff that they needed to know. And when I first got into this thing, I knew that my job was to kind of pop the top off and pour it in, pop the top back on, walk away. I've done my thing. But it didn't take me very long before I realized that that wasn't the gig at all, that didn't work. I could not do that. And that as long as I was standing in front of the classroom lecturing and talking, what I was getting was some eye contact, and every now and again I'd get a little affirmation, yeah, nice, good shot, Dave, that kind of stuff. But what wasn't happening was a lot of listening wasn't happening. I wasn't really listening to them. And I completely changed the way I did college professoring. Got rid of the lectern, got tables, sat around, started teaching even large classes at seminars so that I could spend some time listening. And for a while, I felt like I was cheating my students. They're not getting their money's worth. I'm not talking nearly enough. They're paying for this education. But then it dawned on me that, in fact, they were getting their money's worth, because the whole point of the thing, the whole point of the education was for them to have an opportunity to talk about what was important to them. And then it took me 20 years worth of practice to learn how to listen. Once I got them to the point where I could teach them how to talk, or I could allow them the space to talk, it took me a long time to learn how to listen. And when I think about youth today, my guess is that it's never been 2 minutes. Lord have mercy. I think it's never been easy to be a young. I don't think it's ever been easy to be a young person, whether it's a young person in America or a young person in Beirut or a young person in Afghanistan. I don't think it's ever been easy to be a young person. But I think that it's particularly difficult at this particular point in our country because we clearly do not listen. We are sending everybody, young people, middle-aged people, older people, we are sending everybody millions and millions and millions of mixed messages. Some of those messages are very commercial. Buy this, buy that, go to this vacation spa, go to this place. We're hearing these messages. Nobody listening, but everybody telling us things that we ought to be doing. And I think that we're particularly guilty of doing this when we're dealing with younger people, because we have a tendency to think that because we have the advantage of age, because we have the advantage of wisdom that obviously comes with age, that we have the advantage of experience, that somehow or another we have more to offer to them than they have to offer to us. And I guess what I would like to talk with this community about is the fact that we need to turn that model completely on its head. That if we are really going to understand what's happening in our communities and what's happening to the young people in our communities, we've got to shut our yaps. We've got to be quiet. We've got to start allowing spaces for people to talk about the things that are very important to them. I know I've got half a minute left, but I'm going to take a half a minute more than that if I may. My model would be the Early Childhood Center that we have at Compass. I've got the other thing that's wonderful about my office is I can be a voyeur. The kids can be doing their thing downstairs, and I've got these windows where I can look down and I can see what they're doing, and I can listen to them, and I can kind of be a voyeur. And when I'm listening to 3-year-old kids working out the problems of the world, and by God, 3-year-old kids work out the problems of the world. I mean, they know what those problems are, and they're working at them. And when I'm listening to those kids all by themselves, no adults in there telling them how to do it or what the appropriate path is, but they're down there struggling with those issues themselves, I'm here to tell you they are more honest with one another in talking about various things that they can do than we have. Well, we're not that honest with one another anymore. We don't do that when we get to a certain age. They are more creative with one another about what the issues are that they're really grappling with, about what the issues are that they really need to work on so that they can resolve whatever their problem is. And when I look at things like our educational system, one of the things that bothers me the most is that somewhere along the line, we filter that out of our children. We filter that out of the youth. Somewhere along the line in our sort of formal processes for teaching you how to be a person in our culture, we filter out of our younger people the ability to talk with one another openly, the ability to talk with one another honestly, the ability to talk with one another about issues that are extraordinarily difficult to talk about, and yet they don't know any better, so they just lay it out on the table and they talk about it. And I think that the only way we are going to get rid of that filter so that we can actually talk to the younger people in our community about what the things are that are just really gnawing at their craw, the only way we're going to get rid of that filter is if we can figure out a way that we can start listening more closely and talking less, which I'm going to do now. So, as I said, I bring nothing to this other than it's kind of a gut feeling that there's a different way of dealing with young people than we're doing it.
Before you stop, I want to ask you one question. The condition of our youth today.
How the condition of our youth today. Actually, Connie, Marlow, and I were talking about this the other day. I think it's damned hard. That's what I think. I think that it's incredibly hard. I think that let's take the community of Aspen. We have a difficult time in the community of Aspen. Some families had a more difficult time than others a year ago. Some families are still having a difficult time with that. And I think that as a community, what we've done is we've said we've resolved that problem. We've dealt with that particular group of people, and now it's okay. And kind of my sense of it is that the kids are not okay. My sense of it is that the young people in our community are not okay. That the same kinds of external forces that have been bombasting kids for a long time are bombasting hard now. I think that we are finding young people in our community constantly being treated with disrespect or ignored. I think that we are finding them constantly being given mixed messages about what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, what's right and what's wrong. I think we are constantly bombarding them with messages about what they're